Okay, so welcome to episode 23 of the Health of Business Leader. And today I'm joined by, I've been informed how to pronounce your second name now. It's Martin Macleod. So we've been connected for a little while on LinkedIn. I've actually done one of Martin's courses around kind of stock market education, which was brilliant. And Martin shares lots and lots of content on financial education for people that want to learn more about how to invest in the stock market, how to gain control over their personal finances. And yeah, it's really cool to have you along today, Martin. So yeah, give us a bit of an introduction to what you do and do a better job than I just did.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. So I am Martin Macleod. I am the owner of Financial Health Club, which I help people with their personal finances and the stock market. Having come from a background of being a stockbroker and being a chartered financial advisor and walking away from the regulated side to actually help people from all walks of life. Obviously, in my previous roles, you might have only been able to help somebody that had 100,000 odd to invest, or that might have been a millionaire. Now I can help anybody, and I get to really help. I get to help people understand in a safe space, like the education side of it, because there's massive gaps, as you can imagine, in the education side. Because none of us were educated in this stuff at school. I knew nothing about the stock market. I knew nothing about investing until I was lucky enough to get a job in the city in London. Had I not done that, I would still be completely unaware of the benefits of investing in the stock market because it's just not something that my parents taught me, and it's not something that school ever taught me. So it's great that I'm now able to help people from all walks of life understand it and use it and to benefit themselves and benefit their families forever. So it's a passion of mine personally to have invested money in stocks and shares and to be able to now educate people on how to do that for themselves, be able to show how I would pick stocks or the things I'm looking for, having been trained in it, but also more so from reading hundreds of books over many years from very top investors to understand. Because, like when I started, I lost money because I didn't know what I was doing. So, admitting that you don't know what you're doing and then spending lots of time researching allows you to now help people not make those mistakes and not lose money because they now know what they're looking at. So, I certainly put them in a better position to not make bad decisions when they invest or bad decisions when they pick shares. So that is what I do on a daily basis. And I obviously, as you say, try my best to put that across on LinkedIn daily.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen the. I mean, there's lots of points to pick up on there. I mean, I did kind of say at the start, I'd actually been through one of your programs, so I
Yeah.
can speak from personal experience, like what that was like, and we'll pick that up in a minute. But I think what was really cool is to understand a bit more about. You mentioned the City of London. Now, personally, from a selfish point of view, I've got good deep roots in the City of London, so I know
Yeah.
quite a
Yeah.
bit about it. So it'd be really interesting to hear a bit about your story to understand kind of how did you go from growing up in Scotland to being in the City of London and then getting to where you are now and kind of being more of a, as you said earlier, more of a mentor rather than someone that's working, with
Yeah.
private banks and wealthy individuals, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I was lucky enough to meet a few people at a wedding that were stockbrokers and having a kind of distant family connection to a stockbroker who said that, I would be somebody that would probably be able to pass the exams and be able to go down to the city. And I'd never, at that point, I had no experience of London. I had no experience of the stock market. I genuinely didn't know anything about the stock market apart from it being those little things, numbers that you used to see at the bottom of a news feed. I had absolutely no idea. Even on my first day, I think I knew absolutely nothing about the stock market. But it sort of it was a challenge because obviously you're then in an environment where people are talking about things that you're just way over your head. So it was a tough learning experience, but by one of the things that we had to do each morning, we had to be in the office for like 7 a.m. And there was obviously a lot of traveling involved, but we also had to read the Financial Times so that we could present on a morning meeting before the market opened exactly what the top news stories were. So in the days before the internet became like had everything available to us, we were obviously reading from press. So you had to know the market, you had to learn. So just being able to consistently do these things of reading the Financial Times when you're shattered on a train for 45 minutes in the morning, getting used to the terminology, it was obviously you were then able to pick it up quite quickly. And then working as a stockbroker for a few years and then working in investment management with companies like Barclays and then subsequently with like AXA and Schroders Wealth, you're then just picking up more and more experience. But it was never, but because I'm more of a creative person, as like everybody knows on LinkedIn, I love my guitar songs and play the
Yeah.
bagpipes. I knew that the kind of person I was lucky to know the stock market because I would never have come across it. I would never have understood the benefits of investing or the benefits of looking after personal finances. That would not have been something that somebody like me would ever have picked up. So I always had this passion whereby like I can remember sitting in an office in 2019 saying I'd love to teach people this stuff or educate them. Um, and everybody would just laugh, saying that's never going to happen. You know, you're never going to get the opportunity to do that. That's not like the Americans do it, and the Australians might do it. They might have financial mentors or financial coaches. It's never going to catch on in Britain. And I did think at that point they were probably right, but COVID obviously changed a lot of things, and it changed the ability for us to work remotely and to help anybody across the UK. And even I've worked with clients obviously that are traveling the world, maybe that are maybe UK residents. So it's been a massive eye opener to be able to now do something that you always had a plan to do, but never really could see it being a potential future for you. I never really thought I could do this. I suppose there is there's some benefits to that. The fact that the technology has basically caught up to allow me to do it, and the technology is also caught up to allow us all to invest. Because a lot of my clients will say, "I wish I'd met you 20 years ago," and I'd say, "If you met me 20 years ago, you probably wouldn't have been able to do it. There would have been barriers to entry, like you need 5 grand or 10 grand to open accounts, or you wouldn't have had the ability to just." Go on and place trades yourself. You'd had to have a
Yeah.
financial advisor. You'd had to have a stockbroker. But the world has changed so much to help anybody invest from like 10 quid a month. That would just not have been possible 20 years ago. So I always say to people, don't kick yourself in that respect because, there wouldn't have been the ability to do it as easily as you think. Technology has played such a massive part for all of us to get us to a point where it's easy for us all to invest and it's easy for us all to get like live data that only stockbrokers could have got 20, 30 years ago to our screens daily, which really, really helps. But I guess that's the same like in any industry. You've got to have like if you were doing what you're doing and you tried to do it like 40, 50 years ago, you'd have been hit with so many barriers, wouldn't you? You would have been hit with so many pushbacks. But now you're able to run truth in a way that you wouldn't have been able to do maybe when I was growing up, for example.
Yeah, so everything you say is having that data in your pocket. It's having the dawn of applications. Well, I mean, obviously, I went through your course, and there's a brand that I picked up on. I've used that as an investment platform myself. I mean, the landscape. Then, how has that changed over the last 10 years? I know there's a lot more. I've noticed a lot more advertising around zero fees and low fees, all this kind of stuff
Yeah.
now compared to a
Oh,
couple of
it's
years ago. You
massively
never see that
changed,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
Oh, it's massively, massively changed. I mean, I always go on about that in my LinkedIn content. If you're going to pay financial professionals to invest for you and they're taking a couple of percent, that will take away well over 40% of your wealth over 25 years. And,
yeah,
people can't get their head around that. And that's why I'm always explaining to them that if you do it yourself, you know, you're going to have all the money in the end. Whereas if you're paying people percentages each year, like you would never ever sign over 2% of your house each year to somebody else, like a joiner
mm,
that fitted your kitchen or like somebody who painted your bathroom. You're not gonna sign 2% of your house away every year for the next
no,
25, 30 years, but people happily do it investing. Well, that investing, it's just a wee bit too much for me. And I think, and I always say to them at that point, like who's your financial advisor? Like, do you remember all the people at school that were really, really clever? And they go, yes. And I'll say, are any of them a financial advisor? And they go, no. I say, exactly. So like you can learn this stuff. You can definitely learn this stuff. This is not
yeah,
something that's beyond your capabilities. This is not like cutting somebody open in open heart surgery. This is stuff that is easily learnable and easily doable for you. Like you can
yeah.
do it but easily if you just take a wee bit of time. You don't need to become a financial expert, but you do need to take some time to spend with your own money and learn a wee bit about the stock market and really take that like on board that you're prepared to do it. It's like anything. It's like you could pay somebody to paint your walls forever, or you could just go to B&Q, buy the paintbrush and learn how to paint reasonably well, and it will save you a fortune over the next 30 years if you do that. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to help people do. I'm trying to help them become richer. And yes, people will continue to say, I can't be bothered with that, I'll just pay my financial advisor. Nothing wrong with that. But given the fact that only 8% of the UK have a financial advisor, then my market is 92% of people who don't have one and shouldn't need one to build their wealth. They might need one when they become a millionaire, and they might have to set up trusts or bonds or whatever it is that they might need. But at the moment, they don't need complex advice. What they do need to get started, they do need to create their own wealth, because their parents probably received final salary pensions. You work at BP, they pay you like a pension 40 years later, and they pay it till you die, even if you die at 120. Those days are gone. We need to generate our own money for the future now and in retirement. So it's really important that we understand how to invest and to start doing it with as little as we can at the moment. Because I always get that question, how much should I start with? Well, whatever you can afford, like whatever you can afford. Some people can afford £100 a month, some people maybe less, some people can afford 1,000 a month, but it's really focused on like what you can afford. Just get started though, because that compounding will really
Yeah.
work when you get started, which is really, understanding that is obviously part of the beginner's course that you did, and showing people
Yeah.
the difference between saving and investing. I think people are always amazed by the difference of somebody saving like £500 a month for 30 years in the stock market. You will probably be close to a millionaire. You do that and just save it into bank accounts, you probably have a couple hundred grand. And that's the difference. Is that the difference is monumental. So two people living next door to each other could be working in the same job, driving the same car, but one of them's investing and one of them's saving, and they'll just have totally different futures and totally different like abilities of where they want to go on holiday or what car they buy, that kind of side of things. So I'm trying to get that across as much as possible to people in the courses, and also on a one-to-one basis.
It's really interesting. I mean, I'm going to talk about myself personally because I can share my story. But I mean, I
Yeah,
was, I'm sure people have had a similar experience. It's just that your parents taught you not only the wrong things, but
yeah,
really, really bad money management skill.
yeah,
Essentially not teaching you the basics, just teaching you the worst things you can possibly do, credit cards and don't save and don't invest and, buy what you want, all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I'm 39 now, but I'm kind of only got to this point in the last couple of years. I've started to unlearn a lot of these kind of really bad habits. And I think the main sticking point for me, the thing that really got me to, you know, make the effort and start to learn from someone like yourself. One is having kids and thinking, oh shit, I don't want to leave them in a situation where they've learned the same bad skills. That was the scary one for me. And the second one was seeing my dad pass away without, I'm going to swear, a pot to piss in,
yeah, yeah.
and lots of family members that are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s without a pot to piss in. It's a really, really sad situation to see people that have worked really hard all their lives. And when they actually need that support and need that buffer and that security, just haven't got it. So I think from my side of things, approaching someone like you was really helpful because there is so many podcasts out there. There's lots of videos. There's stuff on YouTube. There's stuff on LinkedIn, and it can be really overwhelming. So having someone like you just to say, right, look, here's the basics. Here's where you should start. For me personally, was really really helpful. So if there is someone watching this and they're not necessarily got 10 million quid sitting in the bank or haven't got a business that's turning over 25 million quid a year, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
they're just looking at the basics, what would be the first kind of couple of steps, would you say, for them to get started?
Yeah, I mean, you make a lot of good points there, as in, I think lots of people put that barrier, or like, oh, well, I wasn't educated with money. My parents didn't educate me well with money. I think most of us are in the same boat. But
Mm.
instead of blaming them, because they're just the product of what they were taught, like
Yeah.
I can remember like going to my grandfather's when I was like 7, 8 years old. And the first job when I got in the door was to fill out the pills coupon. Like, so the first job I did was to gamble. So like that's the first thing that he wanted me to do is fill out like a line on the pools coupon, and then he'd fill out a line, and then he would talk about the results the next week when I saw him, like what went wrong, what went right, like how many draws there were, and then you're looking at the idea of like your horse racing on the television and people gambling, and like it is that way of how most of us were brought up by people who were obviously not educated in money either. So we are at some point you've got to change the record, haven't you? At some point
Yeah.
you've got to be the change in the future of your family. And you're right, having kids is a massive point because I'd say that that's why the average age of my client is around about the 40 mark because it tends to be people who have grown up in a generation where they weren't educated about money. They've got a house, they've got a good job or career, they've got kids, and now they're thinking, right, what's the next step? I need to get a lot of things sorted now. I need to understand a lot more about this. I've never had to talk about it when I'm in my early 20s. I've never had to talk about it even in my early 30s, but now I need to wake up and I need to do something now. I can't be waiting 10 years to do this. I need to do it now. So the first step I would say for people is really working on uh, that basis of finding your savings. A lot of people, the first thing they say when they come to me is, "I don't have any money," and I'll say, "It's definitely not the case that you don't have any money because you're telling me you've got a good job and you're telling me that your wife or partner's got a good job or husband's got a good job. So it's definitely not a lack of money. You have got money. It's just where it's going. Like if you can look at your last year and you can tell me that you've paid £2,000 to Amazon and that you've paid 1,500 to Starbucks, you do not have a cash income problem. You have a spending problem because you're making millionaires and billionaires richer with the hard-earned money you get instead of putting it towards your family, paying your family first. Your family is the most important. You take that 1,500 quid and have coffee in the house because if you're investing that for the next 20 years, you'll have, tens and tens of thousands. That's just one change, like, and people say, oh, I like my coffee. I'll say, yeah, but you probably did. But when I grew up, there was no Starbucks in Costa. I could never have seen a situation where people in Glasgow would actually actively leave the house to buy hot water from somewhere else and queue around the corner. So a lot of people get themselves like, I'm not saying don't buy a coffee and that I don't do it. Of course, I'll go out and buy a coffee, but a lot of people will do it on a daily basis every single day. And if they cut that back to once a week, it would be life changing. If they're trying to find these small improvements that they can invest by cancelling a few subscriptions they don't use, again, by changing. Yeah, at some point you've got to make sacrifices. I think some people will say, well, and you'll understand that completely from obviously what you do. Some people are saying they want, I want the money now, or I want to make money overnight, or they want to get rich quick. It's the idea you can just snap your fingers and it will happen. So they want to take too much risk, when really the best investors got rich slowly, all of them. There's a famous conversation that I mentioned in the courses. Jeff Bezos meeting Warren Buffett and saying, if you're the richest man in the world, why doesn't everybody just copy your investing technique and what you do? And Warren Buffett just turns to him and says, because nobody wants to get rich slowly. Everybody's desperate to try and do it now. Let's buy some crazy coin that might double tomorrow, even though I don't know what I'm doing and I don't understand what I'm doing. So it's understanding that most successful people, it took them time to get wealthy. But we're trying to build repeatable processes. We're not trying to go out there and get a hole in one in golf because we've got no idea how we did it. We're trying to get like a repeatable process we can use for the rest of our life. Somebody like Warren Buffett invests in shares exactly the same way he did at 25 or 35, even though he's currently 95, and he still uses the same process. He knows the process works. He knows he can repeat it anytime he needs it. And he uses that process just like a pilot uses a checklist. So, and it's important to do that. So it's important, like, for us all to realise that because we didn't necessarily grow up with a good money education, that's not the end of it. There is a way to change it, and there's plenty of time to change it. If you're going to be investing for 10, 20, 30 years, there's a lot of money can be made that can be completely life changing by making some small steps, just some small savings now.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually because a lot of what you're saying there very much resonates with how we look at health and those kind of long-term outcomes. I think,
Yeah,
a similar mindset with money, similar mindset with weight loss and health. People want to kind of do it in 2 weeks, so they take Manjaro and Ozempic, making the billions,
yeah,
more money, right? But using that as a shortcut because it doesn't take any effort. But the problem is that it's not repeatable. There's actually a study came out. I shared it a couple of weeks ago around how most people that are stopping these drugs are putting on 2, 3, 4, 5 times the amount of weight that they lost in the first place. And the reason is because they've not changed anything. They've not learned how to eat. They've not learned how to rest or recover or to work out or how to eat properly. They've just taken the shortcut. So I think it's a kind of very similar in the fact that you've got to build those foundations and look at it as
yeah,
at least for the next 12 months, this is what I'm going to be doing. And the person that you are in January is going to be very different to the person you are in December. Same with finances. If you take that longer
yeah,
term approach to it, because quick fixes 99.9% of the time in my industry just don't
yeah.
work. They might give you
You'll
some
never work.
results, but they're going
Yeah,
to unravel. I guess it's
yeah.
similar with you guys as well.
No, exactly. I suppose because you hear, when I grew up, you always had you had everybody going crazy for the Atkins diet. Now everybody's going crazy for Manjaro and Ozempic, and every yeah, they're losing the weight, but they don't. Like, I mean, I can remember using the Atkins diet. You lost weight quickly, but you looked in the mirror and you looked completely grey. Like your skin looked completely grey. It had absolutely no nutrients in it at all. So
Yeah.
it's you can see that, and obviously some people that are taking some of these weight loss drugs. Obviously, they are going to lose weight, yes, but they're probably not going to keep much of their muscle retention, and they're probably then when they stop taking the drugs, which I'm assuming they will have to unless they want to spend a lot of money for the rest of their life, they will then naturally put on weight quickly because they haven't, as you said, they haven't changed anything in their mindset. They've simply just taken a shortcut, which is an expensive shortcut, which obviously means that they're going to have to pay somebody again to relearn how to control their mind.
Yeah, I think that generally there's no shortcuts. I mean, I've been in business now for this is our ninth year in business now, and
Yeah,
looking back at the start, and I read back on some of my notes actually from our second year of kind of end of first year being in business, and some of the stuff I was saying was just crazy. I'm looking back and going thinking you were so deluded around what's kind of the reality of business. I think business, finances, health, all those three relationships, they just take a long time. They take a lot longer than what you think they're going to take. But like you say, it's about doing it properly and building those foundations. And once you do that, once you get a year underneath your belt and then another year, that's when it really starts to build that momentum. And I think, especially in today's society where we've got everything instantaneously, we can have
yeah,
access to anything we want within the 5 seconds. You can get a Deliveroo to your house, a McDonald's Deliveroo to your house, and use Klarna and not even pay for it now from the comfort of your own home is just insane. And I think, us specifically as a company, we're okay to talk about long and slow. We're not. We haven't got a problem with that. I know it's not
yeah.
particularly sexy, and everyone wants the quick, but
There's-
I think people need the opposite now. We need to go at things a little more slowly and be more realistic because I think we've been sold this dream of we can have everything we want. I mean, I look at my kids; they're 9 and 6. They're on YouTube, right? I hate YouTube, by the way. They get
Yeah,
maybe on the weekend, maybe an hour, and I watch what they're watching. They don't watch stuff we don't like, and they put some stuff on. I'm just sitting going, there's no wonder these kids think that you can get a Lamborghini in
no,
35
no,
seconds
yeah,
flat. It's just creating this craziness in their head. And I stopped the video and watched it with them. I go, do you know, I realize that car is worth the same as our house, right? And look how hard your mum and dad have to work to look after this
yeah,
house.
yeah.
This is not the reality. But anyway, I've gone on a bit there. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
No, I agree. I like YouTube. I think YouTube is brilliant as an example of something that's brilliant if you know what you're looking for. If you can find reputable people and you know your industry well enough to use YouTube. So I can use YouTube to find out things about my industry from people who I know and trust. So that part of it is really good. But 95% of it is obviously just toxic waste by people who don't know anything about the subject and are pretending that everything is easy and everything is an overnight. And yeah, and just because it's got a funny caption or it's got like cool colors, it just entices young people in, and they just believe what's in front of them because somebody's obviously paid for to rent a Lamborghini or to, and that's one of the major dangers has always been in the finance game. People running these kind of Ponzi schemes, the idea of
Bullshit.
just
Bullshit.
pretending to be wealthy, so that you give them money and they give you a wee bit of money back, but essentially they're just running a huge big Ponzi scheme in order for them to be rich and eventually for you to lose all your money. So yeah, you definitely want to avoid these kind of people at all costs because like having been around a lot of people, having worked with a lot of people who have lots of money, you're always surprised. And this is why I always go on about like, you'll see on LinkedIn all the time about like, how you should be power dressing and how you need to own a room and all that kind of stuff. I've worked with lots of millionaires plus, and trust me, they walk into a room with holes in their jumpers. Some of them are like, will turn up in a tractor. So like some of them are like genuinely look like they have got not a penny to rub together. Like they genuinely do not care about anything. So this idea that you can usually these flashy videos with people in flashy suits and Lamborghinis will be the very opposite of what lies behind the scenes. Because mostly the people that I've met that have, and there are exceptions obviously, but mostly the people that have got money don't really talk about money much. They don't really necessarily need more money, and they clearly have a good money mindset, but they don't necessarily have to show you how much money they have. They don't and they're not always, taking pictures of their cars or talking about their cars. So, and that's certainly in my experience, that taught me well is that, these people are good at what they do, which is why they have so much money. They have a passion which they are very good at, which has led to them having lots of money. Or in the experience that I had, many of them had been investing for years and had invested well because they had a good money mindset, but they didn't think of themselves as being particularly wealthy, and they certainly wouldn't go onto a video and take pictures of their multiple cars or their stables or their swimming pool because they just saw that as a nice to have for their family. So I guess that's the danger, is that they're trying, as you say, they're trying to sell something instantaneous to a generation that needs everything yesterday. It needs everything in 2 minutes, whereas the generation I grew up in wasn't like that. We used to have to put 10 pence in a phone box and run down the road to make a phone call. Like we didn't have that. We did not grow up like that. So you can see that this next generation do want things instantly. They're not even happy with television. They need television. They need YouTube. They need something that's got an instantaneous reward or an instantaneous update that's live. They're not even they crave information quickly and they want it in a short form as well. They're not prepared to read a book. They're not prepared to go to a library and read a book on a subject. They want it. They want that book to be distilled into a 4 minute video for them, which I find remarkable that anybody can pretend to tell you all the best bits of a book in like 4 minutes, which seems to be catching on massively, especially in the finance industry. Like, trust me, you'd be better reading the book because you will definitely pick up a hell of a lot more information than you can in a 4 minute video.
Comes down to education again, doesn't it? I mean, you're hitting lots of notes with me having two young kids and seeing their mindset. I mean, we do push them to read. We make sure they do things properly because they've not really got into the AI thing yet. But this obviously is going to change the
Yeah,
whole entire game. Now, I mean, I've been using it for about a year now, so I'm fairly up to date with what's going on and just from a business perspective, but it does concern me that they can use that as a tool to do everything four
yeah,
times as quick and allow them to cut shortcuts all of the time. So I think it's important that as parents we educate our children on, look, if you don't read the book you're going to miss 20 of the most important points from it. Having a whistle stop tour of it is not going to give you what you need. So I think it's times are changing. I mean, if I look at again from an industry perspective, specifically with health and fitness, talk about it quite a lot, and I'm sure you've got some insights on the financial industry. But it's everyone's after the what's going to be the new big thing. I mean, there's the AI
yeah,
mirror, for example. You probably check the shares out, stuff like that. But it's doing phenomenally well. It's this mirror that goes on the wall in your bedroom. It's like 500 quid, something like that. And it's got an AI personal trainer on it. It's in the convenience of your home. It takes you through a workout. It tracks all your numbers, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's all about convenience. It's about keeping it really cheap and easy, getting your results, etc. But the whole problem with all this kind of stuff, AI applications, AI agents running your fitness and nutrition programs, it doesn't really understand context. It's got an empathy of where you are on your journey. It's not actually teaching you anything. It's not giving you the
Yeah.
education to say, oh, hey, look, once you've watched these 10 videos, once you've filled in these 3 consultation forms, once you've had 2 or 3 conversations with someone that really knows what they're talking about, like yourself or like me in my industry, you're going to get
Yeah.
so much more from that. But it is a little bit more painful. You do have to face up to some realities
Yeah,
around
exactly.
your personal situation. You're going to have to go through that process because that's the best way to do it. So I think the health and fitness industry, it's going to all be going that way, and people are going to love it, and people are going to make a lot of money from the whole kind of quick fix, convenient type stuff. But I think with what we do, it's very much the other end of the market. And I think probably people will start crying out for more of that once they're sick and tired of this kind of quick fix stuff and realizing that it's not going to work. So, what have you seen in the financial industry? What is AI doing to your industry, and what are the trends you're seeing at the moment?
Yeah, it's similar to what you're saying, that there'll always be these kind of fads that will take place, or people are saying, no, you can AI can teach you to invest, AI can teach you this, but it's like you said, you've got no understanding of the person behind it. Like I can read investment books now, and I can that when I read them, I can now take something from them. But when I tried to read them starting out, I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And even some of them that I read now, even years into my journey, I still didn't understand or grasp what they were talking about. So it's almost like I can read the stuff now, and the AI probably could teach me, who has got all the basics in place and the general knowledge to understand what's rubbish and what's right. And I know if AI is lying or not, if it's making it up, but you can't possibly know if you don't have enough experience or knowledge about the area. And the AI will not know what, like for example, you're talking about an AI mirror. That's all well and good, but who's making you go onto the AI mirror? Who's holding you accountable to the AI mirror? And when you eventually stop using it, it's just going to end up in your wardrobe, like the exercise bikes, like the Pelotons. Everything. There will always be fads. People will always buy fads. It's like people will always buy a magic weight loss pill. They'll always try anything that's available in the market because people, as you say, are inherently lazy and just want to get everything overnight. So like the people that come to me, they'll send me a share that they're about to buy or a share that they've just bought. Now, obviously, I'm not going to give them advice, but I might ask them some questions, like because I'll go onto my research platform and I'll look at the share, and the share will have been on the stock market since 2005, and for 21 years, every single year, it's lost money. So it's been a loss-making company for 21 years, and it started off with 5 million shares, and now it's got 500 million shares because all it's doing is basically pumping and pumping and pumping out for more money to shareholders. Every single time they do it, each year there's new shareholders that suddenly get excited about like this new craze that they might be trying to create. But it's quite clear that for 21 years they've been failing. And but most people don't care or look at into that. They just think, I've heard a good story about this stock, and I always call them like, fantasy story stocks. I've heard a good story about this stock, therefore I'm going to buy it because my friend says it's going to the moon. And you're thinking, well, there is one place it's probably going, but it's definitely not upwards. You know what I mean? So it's like, but you've got to kind of but people are so desperate because they think if I can put 10 grand or 5 grand into this and my friend's right, it's going to go up 1,000%, then if I do that a couple of times, I'm not going to need to work again. And it's this idea that it's this desire to gamble really rather than actually put in a wee bit of effort. And people are like you're talking about with the weight loss. People have got no idea how their body's going to react to these things, the gambles that they're taking, but they're willing to take a gamble with their own life, but essentially, or their own health, just to try and do something that they could do a lot easier and a lot less with a lot less money and a lot less pain probably in the long term by actually just actively changing that, which is so it's crazy that people are willing to do that. It's crazy to me that people are willing to put 10,000 on some crazy investment or crazy coin that they've never heard of. But if I ask them to go and buy a 500 quid television or fridge. They'd go up to Curry's and start asking questions to the staff, go online and see if it was cheaper elsewhere, get some reviews in the product. They'll do that, but they wouldn't even think about that. 5, 10 grand, I'll put that in this is going to make me rich. I'm going to do it tomorrow. It's crazy, but it's just the way people work. It's the human emotions, and that's the part of it that AI will never understand. They can never understand how a human being will react. When a stock market crashes, humans react in a certain way, mostly badly because they don't know what they're doing, but mostly each human will take on a different viewpoint of what's happening. Some will react well to it, some will react badly, some will need to reach out and get some assurance from people like ourselves. It's exactly the same on a journey of like looking at fitness as well. The idea that you would need somebody to ask questions of why is this happening? This is what I'm struggling with. This is the part I don't understand. This is what I need help with. And AI will never be able to provide that. It will just be able to provide endless amounts of data and endless amounts of um, structured generic content, really generic stuff for everybody. It's not going to be unique to you.
The thing I picked up on there was where you said that someone shared a stock with you, and then you was like, you went in there and checked and said, well, it's lost money for the last 21 years, right? So
Yeah.
because of your experience, you was able to spot that. Whereas because they
Yeah,
haven't got that experience, they didn't spot it. It's a very similar
yeah,
kind of thing, right? Unless you kind of you talk to someone that knows what they're talking about. I have lots of conversations with very, I'm doing air quotes here, very smart people, right? That are running companies
yeah,
that, clearly have know a thing or two about making money and, running companies and staff and hire and all this kind of stuff, right? So,
yeah,
yeah, they've done very well for themselves. But when it does come to personal responsibility around their health, and that's what it comes down to, right? Same with finances, it's personal responsibility. You have to say, look, this is my body, this is my mind. I have 100% ownership and responsibility over what happens to it. Obviously, it's extenuating circumstances. I get that stuff that can happen, right?
yeah,
But 99.9% of the time, stuff that happens to you that you don't want to happen is because you haven't done anything to stave that stuff off, right? So when it comes to things like having conversations around training or nutrition or rest or supplementation, whatever it might be, right, for an individual person, the roadblock that I often come up against is people that are doing really well in one part of their life, i.e., business. So they're CEO, they're a multimillionaire, they've done really well for themselves, they've got nice
yeah,
cars, they've got holidays. But then when it comes to their health, you kind of you throw a couple of questions out there and you hit a roadblock. And the roadblock generally in my experience is that they think that they're really clever in this one part of their one area of
yeah,
their life and done really well, it should be replicated in each area because they're smart, they can work it out. But
yeah,
that's generally not the case because there's so many different nuances to where you're at and what you're doing. Lots of things that can come up. Give you an example. Spoke to a 55-year-old CEO 2 weeks ago, 4 stone overweight, smoked for donkey's years,
yeah,
always getting gout on a whole range of medications. Now this guy's sitting in front of me. We've had a 2 hour conversation. Sitting in front of me, he said, "No, do you know what? I'm not going to invest at the moment. I'm going to go and fix it myself." And my question to him before we went off the
yeah,
phone was, you've been trying for 50 years or
yeah,
48 years since you were small. Well, you've always been overweight. What's changing in the next 10 minutes that you haven't been able to do for the last 40, 45 years? And he said, I'll work out myself. So it is kind of crazy because, being good at one thing like business or finances for you or health and fitness for me, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to work out yourself. You need to get into the trenches and speak to someone that knows what they're doing because at the end of the day, they're going to spot things like, he's lost money for 21 years. What are you talking about? You lunatic.
yeah, yeah. No, no, and that's exactly it because you're the only person that can spot the mindset issues that somebody has by talking to them. And a machine can't do that unless it's going to talk to the person and ask them all the right questions and also be able to, hold them accountable to that as well, make sure that they understand and that the changes are taking place. And I just don't think, I'm not saying that at some point in the future, a machine might not be able to do that, but at the moment it certainly can. And I think people tend to get far too excited, and it's the same in the stock market. They get too excited about the future. This is what happened in the technology boom in 1999. People there was thousands of internet stocks suddenly come on the market. Everybody got excited about them, but everybody knew also that there was only going to be a couple of winners, and there was like your Google, because we don't need to have 1,000 different like platforms. We just need Google, don't we?
Yeah,
We don't need 1,000 competitors. We just need one thing to
yeah,
go on the internet and search, really.
yeah,
So it was natural there was always going to become like one major winner. And AI is the same, where you see all these fantastic ideas about the future and what it's going to be capable of. But fundamentally, we still eat with a knife and fork invented thousands and thousands of years ago. Not like, apart from the odd bit of tech, people in Britain are still kind of driving similar cars to 40 years ago when I grew up. They're
yeah,
still driving, the Volvos and the Audis or whatever. So like your BMWs, not a lot has changed. We don't have, if you'd said to people in my generation who grew up with Star Wars and Star Trek, you'd have thought we'd have flying cars by now, all of us. But 40 years later, we're not even close to it. People are not even wanting to go down the electric route, never mind a flying car. And like it takes a lot longer to change things than people think. The electric
yeah,
car was first invented in the 1970s, and we're still at a point where most of Britain is going to be about 10, 15 years from having one. And it's the same as like the idea of, the mobile phone was invented God knows when, but it took a long time before everybody in Britain said, oh, most people wouldn't have one for the first 20 years. They thought it was a bit like ridiculous. And then like they thought that was something that, David Jason used in Only Fools and Horses or something. And then a bit by bit, they're like, oh, they're a bit like mobile computers. Or I'm going to get one of these. So now everybody is transitioning to a mobile phone. But I think somebody told me the other day that even now, something like 80% of the world's transactions take place in cash, and people think cash will disappear tomorrow night. But it's quite clear that around the world, cash is still, king in that sense. So it takes a lot longer for the machines to take over. I mean, AI must have been around for 3 or 4 years now. It's not changed my life one iota. Like, I'm not
yeah,
saying it's not changed tech businesses in California, but it's not changed anything for me and for most of my friendship group, or my kids. So I guess like there are obviously going to be huge structural changes take place, but it's certainly not going to happen overnight. It's certainly not going to
yeah,
happen to the point where, as I said to somebody, if AI makes everybody jobless, then who's going to pay money for any of us to live? And who's going to buy the products that AI produces? Because none of us would be able to afford anything. It's this idea that people will become obsolete, or that as long as the human race remains, there will be mindset problems with everybody around everything, because they need help with their fitness, they need help with money, they need help with their mental health. A computer will never be able to fix that, in my opinion. Like that's just, I just don't see something, excuse me, happening in the next 40, 50 years that will change that. Unless we
yeah.
get like living robots in our houses that talk and act exactly like humans, and can replicate the job of us, which, I suppose it's a possibility, definitely, in the very distant future. But I don't see it being something that anybody in our lifetimes really has to worry about as a main point of focus.
I think I tell everyone just to calm down a little bit, Martin.
Yeah,
Calm
exactly.
down a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Yeah, people get far too carried away. Like they do get
Yeah,
far too carried away, and they get too worried about things as well. They get too worried about the future. The AI will definitely produce lots of great stock market performers, and there'll be some unbelievable gains to be made in the next 3 or 4 years, and it will be a brilliant time to invest. But naturally, there will only be a few big winners out of it, because it tends to be when somebody produces something like an Apple iPhone that nobody else has thought of yet, that they're going to be the runaway leader. And Motorola and your Nokia's fell by the wayside very quickly. So
yeah,
that first mover advantage doesn't seem to count for as much when it comes to these kind of things, whether it's an electric car or AI, for example. It could be somebody else way in the future that wins big out of it, but we don't need to be worried about that right now.
yeah. I was reading yesterday about how BYD is biggest producer of electric cars right now. They're outstripping Tesla. Who would have seen this stuff happening, right?
Yeah, exactly. And somebody might create some massive technological advancement on what they've produced and be able to
Overtake
you
them.
know, export worldwide. So yeah, the whole thing is it can change very quickly, and but that's one of the reasons why people need to kind of calm down and focus on, yeah, on their own lives and their own businesses just now because you don't know what changes are going to come. It will happen at such a
Yeah,
fast pace. But again,
yeah,
there's lots of clients of mine, and certainly when I worked in the financial industry, that would have struggled to use a computer or Zoom until very, very recently. So the idea that they're going to suddenly have their finances taken over by a robot, you'd be like, I'm not sure that I'm not sure most of them would be up for that. I think it'll take them a
yeah,
long time to start to trust like Claude or some form of Chat GPT for running
yeah.
their money or their health.
I hear you, mate. I hear you. Well, I really enjoyed that conversation. I'm going to wrap it up now because I want to keep it about 40 minutes ish, which is perfect where we're at. Where
Cool.
can people check you out? Like I said, I've done Martin's course and it was the beginner course, which was brilliant. I will
Yeah.
jump on your next course, mate. It's in my to-do list without a doubt. So where can people can check you out? What's the best way to get in contact? And yeah, where can they have a look at what you do?
Yeah, they can. I post obviously daily, usually on LinkedIn, and they can find me at financialhealthclub.co.uk. I run the big ultimate beginners investing course, which obviously you've been on. I also run a stock picking course for people who want to get to that kind of next level of understanding how I would look at data and understand when a share would be a buy, when it would be a sell, and also, for example, as we're talking about how I can easily see that a company's been losing money for 21 years or that it's been making loads for 21 years. You need to know that stuff before you buy shares, and I show you how I find that information very easily and very cheaply, so that you're able to make more kind of better decisions with your money.
So LinkedIn probably best place to message you. Is that right?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Just
Yeah.
message me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to chat about what are either your current circumstances or if you want to jump on a course anytime.
Superb. Thanks for your time, Martin. Thank you, mate.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. Much appreciated.